Hello, everyone, and welcome to the Whiskey and History Podcast. I am your host, Zach Omeyer. Sorry, guys, it's been a hot minute since I've recorded a podcast. Things have been quite busy this summer. Life has been extremely crazy. I'm excited to finally sit down and bring you guys lots of new material. Just to give a little bit of flashback, with today's episode, it is about the local band, Springfield band, the Harmony Brothers. From the 1950s, early 60s rock and roll band. But to give a little back history on all that, of course, we have to start the episode off with what whiskey I'm drinking. And I am drinking the new Elvis Tiger Man whiskey. I saw this online, about a couple weeks ago. Been kind of obsessed with Elvis lately since the new movie just came out, which I thought was pretty decent. Me and my fiance went and saw it. Anyway, since this episode has to relate with rock and roll music, I figured what would be better than trying a new whiskey, the Tiger Man Elvis whiskey. It's straight Tennessee whiskey, 45% alcohol, pretty strong stuff. Let's do the taste test. Oh, that's really good stuff. That actually kind of reminds me of, you guys are kind of well known of this, that I love Crown Royal. Actually kind of tastes like Crown Reserve. I'm drinking it straight on the rocks with a touch of ice water. But anyway, on the back of the bottle, it has a nice little saying, which I'll read to you guys about this whiskey. Elvis Presley was a man of many nicknames, including Tiger Man, the King of the Jungle. Some say it was his dad who first called him Tiger Man. Some say it was a fan. Either way, the name was a perfect fit. Elvis first performed the song Tiger Man in concert in Las Vegas in 1969 and continued playing it through the years, usually in the melody with Mystery Train singing it over 150 times on stage. So, like I said, the bottle's really cool. Good flavor. I like a little bit of a history to it. The name of the whiskey, especially. Big fan. It has this famous trademark logo on the top of taking care of business. Elvis's trademark, of course. And it's got a little QR code to take you to the other flavors. There's two of them. This one, and then actually I'll pull it up on my phone. I have it right here. The Tiger Man, like I just tried, and then the Elvis King Straight Rye Whiskey, which honestly I may try at a later time, but I'm not a big fan of the rye whiskey flavor, but this straight Tennessee whiskey of the Tiger Man is a must drink. And if you are a big music lover, Elvis fan, it's got nice raised lettering on the bottle. I'll take a picture of it, put it on my Instagram and social media, and of course I will put a link to the whiskeys. But anyway, 90 proof, worth recommending, and I can't wait to drink it throughout this episode with all you guys. So anyway, going down to the story of the Harmony Brothers band of Springfield, this story basically takes me back quite a few years to when I graduated college with my undergraduate in history. One day I was bored at home, and I don't know, all history majors do this, but I'm nerdy and I love history, obviously. I got on our local newspaper database, which we all well know that's how I did a lot of my research. I was searching my family, just searching, relatives, my grandpa, my uncles, my aunts, great uncles, great aunts, all that stuff, fun stuff. And then I researched one of my great uncles that my aunt married. So my great uncle by marriage, his name was Ben Harmony. And I searched his name just randomly, like I said, just going through the family. Went back quite a few years to the 1950s, and something caught my eye, which I was extremely surprised of. And that was, I saw him in an advertisement for his latest record. And I'm a huge, huge music fan. I love classic rock, traditional rock and roll of the 1950s, early 60s, all that stuff. I'm a big music buff. I have a huge vinyl record collection. But anyway, back to the story. I saw this with him and his brother Charlie Harmony. They had a single with 2 songs that came out, and they were doing a record signing at a music shop in Springfield. Well, that was actually the name of the record shop, the music shop. And they were doing autographs and selling their records as a promotion. And then every record that someone bought, they would get a free bag of Kelly potato chips. That was on the advertisement. I was absolutely mind blown because I didn't know anything about this. And I immediately knew I had to reach out to my great aunt, Helen, and then my great uncle, Ben. So I called them, went over to their house, and talked to them for a few minutes, and I was wanting to do an interview. And of course, he agreed. He was in his early 80s at the time, and this was in the spring of 2017. I just graduated in the fall of 17 with my undergrad in history. Spring of 18 when I decided to take off for college, and then go and get my master's starting in the fall of 18. So I knew in the meantime I needed to start doing some work. I talked to my professor, said, hey, kind of start doing a little bit of research in this one semester off so you can get prepared for the master's program and basically kind of get an idea of what you want to do for a final thesis paper or a project. So I said, yeah, that's a good idea. Well, I kept researching, found tons and tons of more articles. I found another advertisement for record signing. I was extremely, extremely excited. I sat down probably five to seven times with my great uncle, interviewed him. You know, you have to think he's 80 years old, so his memory wasn't the greatest, but I did get some really good research. I got to do an oral history with one of my family relatives, first experience of doing this. Learned a lot. You know, I learned quite a bit of how memory works, and even though it may seem like he can't remember what happened yesterday, he could remember what happened 50, 60 years ago, which is actually really fascinating. And to back this up, as an historian, you learn, you got to take, oral history for, not for granted, but you have to do your backup research on what was said. So I did that. A lot of stuff, what he said, checked with what I found in the newspaper and other things. So, anyway, get to grad school, do all the classes, all that fun junk. Still trying to figure out what I want to do for my thesis. But I never forgot about this story. And I did so much work and research. I found the other band members of the Harmony Brothers band, interviewed a couple others. I interviewed Bill Wallmeyer. I interviewed Tom Blasco. He was the accordion player, which is kind of interesting. A rock and roll band had an accordion player. Pretty cool. Sounds kind of crazy today, but anyway, pretty fascinating. Bill Wallmeyer was the drummer. Ray Dipple, I wanted to interview him. He was the other lead guitar player. He unfortunately passed away a few years prior to this, so I did not get to interview him, unfortunately. But that was the core of the Harmony Brothers band. But anyway, and I finally figured out that I found, when doing this interview process, I undug music and recordings. Besides they recorded 6 songs at the St. Louis recording studio in Missouri of Bobbin Records. That was there at the time. We'll get more into that later. But anyway, I was able to find recordings of them singing on the radio as little kids, on television, and other recordings that were never released. So I will play some snippets of you guys actually right now. Beware that the audio for these early recordings of them on the radio and television are extremely rough, so you may want to turn down your volume a little bit or up after it starts. It's quite loud. you get to hear them play back in 1954 on the radio in Springfield. They are both little kids. It's quite fascinating. But like again, just adjust your volume. It's going to get a little rough sounding here, but it is really pretty special hearing this.
Broken arm. Will that make any difference in what you do tonight?
No.
Well, you're Charlie Harmony, aren't you?
Yes, sir.
Charlie, how'd you break the arm?
Oh, I'm going to snow over at school.
Well, you're going to sing tonight anyway, so it doesn't make an awful lot of difference. Who taught you how to sing? Anybody?
No.
Just picked it up yourself? And this is brother Ben over here?
Yes.
And Ben's a fellow who turned 15 or 16 on Christmas Day?
Yes.
That's kind of nice. Ben plays the, what is that, Hawaiian guitar? Hawaiian guitar he's going to do. All right, it's Charlie Harmony and Ben Harmony. Charlie, checking up, what's your address?
3317 South MacArthur Boulevard, Springfield, Illinois.
Well, that's complete. What are you going to do?
We're going to sing Jambalaya.
Jambalaya, both of you. Okay, Charlie and Ben.
Goodbye, Joe. Me gotta go. Me, oh, my, oh. Me gotta go upon the road down Ohio. My Yvonne, sweetest one. Me, oh, my, oh. Son of a gun, we'll have big fun on Ohio. Jambalaya, crawfish pie, and a filet gumbo. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna see Mom share of me, oh. Big guitar, feel fruit jar, and the gale. Son of a gun, we'll have big fun on the bayou. Steamboat, fountain, the place is buzzing. Kinfolk come see Von by the dozen. Dressed in style and go hog wild, me, oh, my, oh. Son of a gun, we'll have big fun on the bayou. Jambalaya and a sausage pie and a filet gumbo. 'Cause tonight I'm gonna see my share of me, oh. Big guitar, fill fruit jar, and the gale. Son of a gun, we'll have big fun on the bayou.
12-year-old Charlie Harmony, whose broken arm didn't hurt his vocal efforts, and Ben Harmony, 16 years of age. Charlie goes to the West Grand School, and Ben goes to Springfield High, doing Jambalaya.
Isn't that pretty exciting, hearing my great uncle and his brother play on the radio? I just absolutely love it. I just find it fascinating that, you know, where they lived was considered the outskirts of Springfield now. Today it's not. It's over by Shields, the big outdoor store. But anyway, I just love hearing that, you know, they were playing on Hawaiian guitar on local radio at the time. It just absolutely blows my mind that I was able to uncover this. Besides that, my great uncle had several, probably over 100 photos of him and his band playing from the 1950s to the 1960s. I was able to digitize all these images to save them forever. Again, another humbling, amazing experience. So basically, when I was trying to figure out what I wanted to do for my final thesis project, I didn't know if I wanted to do it on my great uncle's band or something else, which again is very difficult. But I had music, photos, interviews. I found another interview that was done with my great uncle Ben and my great uncle Charlie, Ben's brother. He actually passed away about 10 years prior, or about, not 10 years, about 6-7 years prior to me figuring all this out. But someone from the University of Illinois at Springfield, where I went, actually interviewed both of them when Charlie was still alive. So I had this great interview that I could use. So I decided that I could do either a traditional paper or a thesis project slash paper. So something like a museum exhibit or something along those lines. So I said, why about I do a documentary? Because I have all these great images, music. I think of all the great music documentaries that I've seen on Netflix recently, like Sam Cooke and The Last Waltz, and so many others, the Eagles. Anyway, I wanted to do that, and my professor actually loved the idea. And he said, are you able to? Well, I bought Adobe Premiere, and I was playing around with it during winter break of 2019, 19. And no, actually, no. Winter break of 21. Sorry, or 20. I'm losing my mind. The winter break of 2020. I said, let me mess around with it and see if I can figure something out. I was able to put together about a 45-second clip with audio from one of the interviews I did with my great uncle Ben, plus some of their music, plus a couple images where I zoomed in and zoomed out, and it was about 45 seconds. It took me, probably about 5 or 6 hours to create a 45-second clip. And again, I am not good at this. I was doing this on a not very good computer, 2013 iMac. So outdated technology, of course, to run a good program. But anyway, it actually turned out pretty impressive. I was proud of myself. Showed it to my professors. They actually loved it. They said, "You know what, Zach, you can pull this off." And here is the audio from the 40-second clip that I created as a demo for the documentary. I'll also post it on the YouTube channel. Place a link as well in the description. Hope you guys enjoyed this real quick.
We started playing in the public parks in Springfield.
Right.
A lot of times we played like every Wednesday at Bunn Park.
Yeah.
We would go out there and play, and the kids from the south end and east end of Springfield would all come to the park and dance and everything else. And this wasn't sanctioned by anybody. We went in and we plugged in our amps and our mics and set up on their little bandstands, and nobody told us we could, nobody told us we couldn't. But,
Right.
The kids came and danced, and it was pretty peaceful. There was never any trouble. So
Right.
I guess they decided to allow it.
So, anyway, I ended up doing it. The documentary is just a little bit over 30 minutes, the goal was to do a 30-minute documentary. I had to type a paper along with that. I finished grad school last May. Of course, got an A. Quite proud of myself with the limited resources I had, which for the next episode of this podcast, I'm going to do a behind the scenes of this documentary that I created. But I'm also going to post the documentary on my Whiskey and History podcast YouTube channel. I will put the link in the bottom of this video. But anyway, this is more about the history. Watch the 30-minute documentary if you want. If you want to pause this, watch that. Go right ahead. I'll give you a brief history of everything. My goal on this episode is to take a deep dive into that without having to watch it with the images and stuff like that, and maybe give a few more tips on the whole story that I wasn't able to portray in the full 32 or 33 minutes of the film. So hope you guys enjoyed this story about the Harmony Brothers. That's just the background of everything. The story of the Harmony Brothers Band is an important part of history to both the community of Springfield and the rock and roll music. And basically, what happened was when Ben, my great uncle Ben, and I'm not going to quit saying great uncle throughout this, but Ben and his brother Charlie came from a family of 8 children, very, very poor. Basically, like you heard, on the outskirts of Springfield. Didn't have a whole lot. They were the youngest of, like I said, 8 children. Ben was older than Charlie by 2 years. They didn't have a lot to do. They had to work all the time for everything. And basically what happened was when they got older, in their middle school days or early high school days, around 1955, and this is why this whiskey is relevant, Elvis Presley, of course, takes the music world by storm. And when Elvis Presley hit the music scene, it changed music history forever. And a lot of teenagers across the country heard this music that they never heard before, of this rockabilly, this country mixed with a little bit of a rock and roll vibe. And they just couldn't believe that they were hearing this amazing sound. And then seeing, of course, Elvis on television and doing the hip thrusts and the dancing. They've never seen that before, which was portrayed in the movie, of course, that just came out. Basically, that motivated my great uncle, Ben, to start his own rock and roll band with his younger brother. And before this, they sang. That was one thing they did. Before Elvis and all this, they sang. Ben learned how to play guitar, and Charlie just learned how to sing from his older sisters that I was able to find. And their mother and father put them in music contests at the county fairs in New Berlin and all that, and they did really good. They won first place, second place, third place, bunch of ribbons. Got copies of those, pictures of those. Actually, they're pretty cool. From the early 1950s, like 51, 52, 53. Anyway, and Ben took guitar lessons. But when they got older, they heard Elvis. They decided to start their own rock and roll band called the Rocket Beats. And they started playing at their school dances. And they were popular. They played Elvis, all the new Elvis songs, Chuck Berry, all the big artists at the time that were coming out. And they became basically their own teen idols. And the kids knew that Ben and Charlie were brothers, and they thought basically everyone in the band looked alike, sounded alike, so they started calling them the Harmony Boys, because that was what they were recognized as. So they said, screw the Rocket Beats name, we'll just call ourselves the Harmony Boys. And like I said, this band had Ben as lead guitar, Charlie as lead singer. It had Ray Dipple as the other lead guitar, Tom Blasco as the accordion, and then we had Bill Wallmeyer on drums. They had a bunch of people in and out, of course, later in the band with drums, and it's kind of confusing with all the research. It's hard to pinpoint who was when joined the band, who left, who came back. You know, like they always say, drummers in some bands are easily replaceable, all that stuff. But most of the time, it was always Ben, Charlie, Ray, Tom, and Bill. But anyway, they became extremely popular. And then in late 1957, the first dance hall in Springfield opened up. And it was going to be called Teenland. And they wanted the Harmony Boys to play there all the time. And what's interesting about Teenland, it was basically, again, kind of also on the outskirts of Springfield, right across the street from the State Fairgrounds today. The building is no longer there. They tore it down. It was an old strip club. And there was still an active strip club across the street from where Teenland was going to be. And the adults, or the parents of the community of Springfield, were not very pleased with this idea of a teen dance hall opening in a former strip club. And it was kind of hard because the parents at the time knew, which there are police reports of the former strip club, of people being arrested for basically selling illegal drugs and having prostitution run out of there. A lot of not good things. Like in my research, I put police arrested women for sexual misconduct at the strip club. So it does make sense that the elders of the town, which is Springfield, were not excited about the first teenage dance hall opening up across the street. So, and then besides that, the Rex Club also had a raid on that strip club as well. It's not a very good sign for Teenland. And it became popular when it first opened, and it seemed like it was a clean place, Teenland, where there was no drugs or alcohol, just water, soda. In the documentary, I believe I put the great clip of Charlie talking about how he would sing, and then during their breaks, he would go in the back and play fry cook and make burgers and fries and serve them to the kids for a little bit of extra money, because you have to think they weren't paid extremely well to play. This is the 1950s we're talking about here, the late 1950s. But anyway, it was a popular place. Like I said, clean place. It was a lot of good. My Ben told the story of how they would, during the summertime, the AC was not working at the Rex Club, and so they would have the doors wide open on the Rex Club, strip club, and they would look in there and they could see what's going on. They could see the strippers stripping, because you have to think back in the 50s, AC wasn't even really a big thing yet. So they were able to see what was going on. So, again, you could see why people were pretty upset with this teenage dance hall for the time. But the crazy thing is, unfortunately, the people of Springfield were able to dig into the background of the owner of Teamland, which was Bob Taylor. And they said back in the Second World War, when he was in service, he propositioned a prostitute at a naval base where he was stationed, and they used that charge on top of not having a proper business license to run the dance hall. They were able to close it, and so the teenagers of Springfield, including the members of the band, protested. They eventually were able to get Teamland back open. It was a struggle. But anyway, it was pretty exciting because it was kind of like a win for the band. And it's pretty cool that, my family was able to do something like this. And it just seemed like things... But it was a big win for the band because they were able to continue to play there through 57, 58, and up to 1959. And besides that, they were able to play... They're still playing at dance halls, and they were playing in small towns around Springfield like Raymond, Illinois, Taylorville, Mechanicsburg, Riverton, basically every small surrounding town of Springfield they performed at. They performed at the fairgrounds, county fair. They even had a parade downtown for the band with a big banner with people walking, and they were playing. They were very popular. They were big, locally famous. And things changed for the better for the band because of what happens on February 3rd, 1959, also known as the day the music died. And that is the day that will never be forgotten in rock and roll history, with the deaths of Buddy Holly, Ritchie Valens, and then J.P. Richardson, also a.k.a. the Big Bopper. Their plane crashed on the snow-swept fields of Iowa when they were on their Winter Dance Party tour. And what's really shocking about this and why this matters in this story is that the Winter Dance Party tour with Buddy Holly and Ritchie Valens and the Big Bopper were supposed to play in Springfield, Illinois, and a few shows later at the Armory downtown. But they didn't want to cancel the show. So even after the deaths of these huge, huge stars. So basically Waylon Jennings, Buddy Holly's band, came and played with the Crickets still, without Buddy Holly. They still toured even after Buddy Holly died, which is actually really shocking. You would think today most bands that would never fly or happen. They also had Dion and the Belmonts fly in to play, or not, probably not fly in, but that's just a metaphor. But anyway, they also had Fabulous Fabian. Can't even say his name. Fabulous Fabian was the other artist. He was very popular for the time. But what's so crazy about the story is back in the day, again, you're able to basically have a pretty easy time sneaking backstage at these type of concerts and things, especially in your hometown. Well, that's what Charlie Harmony was able to do. During this concert, he was able to get backstage, and he was talking with Fabulous Fabian, and they connected on a personal level where his nephew, which Charlie had his nephew with him, reminded Fabian of his younger brother that he has not seen for weeks during this long and grueling tour that he was on. And that made him feel good. And Charlie explained to him that, we have a rock and roll band, we're very popular, all this stuff. And Fabian wanted to help him out. And so basically, Fabian put him in contact with his agent, Al Shelton, which he was out of St. Louis. And he basically said, Al Shelton was there and said, give me a demo tape of the type of music you guys play, and I'll see what I can get done. So the band recorded a demo tape, gave it to Al Shelton. He actually loved the sound of the band, and he played the demo tape for the owner of Bobbin Records out of St. Louis, Missouri. And Bob Lyons and Little Milton, which became a very, very big artist, actually owned Bobbin Records and were so impressed enough that they would sign them to a record contract. And basically it seemed like the band's big break has finally showed up. And this was very, very exciting news for the band because it felt like they finally got their first big break. And what's interesting is, unfortunately, I love to talk about this section a lot during my documentary, but I lost sight of the story a little bit. Maybe in a longer version or a remake or an extended version of my film I may eventually do, which I may. It's a big may. But basically I want to dive in a lot more into the Bobbin Records label. I've done a lot of research on that. And anyway, the famous African-American blues musician, like I've mentioned earlier, Little Milton, and St. Louis DJ Bob Lyons created Bobbin Records in 1958, so just a year prior. This label is most important out of all the St. Louis labels because it recruited famous African-American blues artists such as Albert King, Fontella Bass, and Oliver Sane. Milton's recording I'm a Lonely Man, which was the first recording on the label, sold over 60,000 records on the label. The Bobbin catalog of 44 records, however, is filled with gems running from 1958 all the way up to 1963. And then finally, in the summer of 1959, Ben and Charlie took their band down to St. Louis to record their first sessions with Bobbin. And during their first sessions, the band recorded 4 songs that were written by Ben and Charlie. The most popular that was recorded was Baby Tonight, which I will play for you guys right now. I won't play the whole thing, but I will play a little bit snippet of it, and it is my favorite song by the band.
Well, I want you near me, honey, tonight. I want you near to hold me tight. I want to kiss and hug you right. I want to give you love tonight, baby, tonight, yes, tonight.
There you guys have it. That was Baby Tonight. It was actually written by Ben, and it's like I said, my favorite. It's a fast-paced song about a guy wanting a girl to love him and spending time with her. It has an Everly Brothers feel, with Ben and Charlie singing in harmony together. And a lot of people at the time also said they sounded just like the Everly Brothers. I think they do too. I honestly think they sound better than they did. But what's also fascinating, which actually I didn't play for you guys, which I'll play for you right now, which is not in the official release that came out of the single, but in the demo of the recording was the song utilizes an accordion solo, which I will play for you guys right now by Tom. And it's actually really, really fascinating that this band, you could argue, was one of the first rock and roll bands to introduce an accordion sound to the music. You could hear it previously in the song from the beginning, but I like the extended version of the song that wasn't released on the 45 record format. Is the accordion solo is actually amazing, and it builds character for the song. So take a listen to this. See, and after that, I absolutely thought it was just so cool that they had an accordion solo on their hit song. I think that's just so fascinating. But anyway, this first record became a huge hit, very successful for the band throughout Springfield. I get to think this is the time, really before music rights, they didn't get a dime for any record sold. It's really unknown how many songs were sold. Or, it's not songs, but records. They sold a bunch in Springfield. I actually found original records on eBay, which you can still go find. You can look it up right now, Harmony Brothers. I'll post a picture of the 45 for you guys. Anyway, you can still find them. They're a little bit expensive. You can still find lots of the Bobbin Records label. Very, very collectible. I own actually quite a bit of them. And anyway, there's some really good blues music. I think it's some of Albert King's best work. I'm a huge Albert King fan. And listening to his 45s of the Bobbin Record sessions are truly, truly amazing. Actually, I digitized Albert King's first record that he recorded on Bobbin Records, and I don't know if I'm really supposed to be playing Albert King's music on this podcast or on any media, but I'm going to anyway for you guys. I digitized the sound off the 45 itself. I have a thing where I can hook up to my stereo and record music onto my digitally onto my computer. So 1959, Albert King's first 45 record on Bobbin Records. If you go to the discography of the Bobbin Records catalog, it's number 114 on the list. You can Google search it real easily. Anyway, the song that I'm going to give, not going to play the whole thing, obviously, here, but the song I like on here is the first song, the A-side, Why Are You So Mean to Me? And then the second B-side is O.E. Baby. But I'm just going to play Why Are You So Mean to Me? Take a quick listen. Really, really great blues stuff. And this is what I'm talking about when it comes to blues music on this label.
Well, I'll be good to you. I'll be kind as a man can be. I'm gonna give you my picture, woman. I want you to hang it up in your frame. When I'm dead and gone, baby, you can see me just the same. Whoa.
As you guys just heard, it's really, really amazing music, and I'm really sad that this label really didn't survive, mostly dominated by African-American artists, blues artists. Really good stuff. Albert King recorded, I think, 3 or 4 different records. I have 2 or 3 of them myself. Great, great stuff. The Harmony Brothers were put on here to add more flavor to the label, have another white band, more poppy music, completely different from the label. You can see where the label is trying to expand with, you've heard the Harmony Brothers sound compared to what Albert King's putting out. Completely on different spectrums, but again, really great stuff. I hope you guys really enjoyed that little snippet of Albert King's early career, which I think is truly, truly incredible. It was basically trying to be the Chess label before Chess was even a label in Chicago. But unfortunately, the story ends in a bad note with the label that 1962, 63, actually around 63, the story goes from the research I found, which there's still a lot to be found on Bobbin Records. There's not much about it. Even in the St. Louis Blues History Museum down in St. Louis, they don't have any mention of it, basically, which is really, really sad in my opinion. They have a very, very small snippet at the very end of the museum when I went 3 years ago in 2019 with my fiance. And I was actually really disappointed about that because it was something you can just go Google right now and read about the label, which there still isn't much about it. So I actually think, my own opinion, I found more in my own research than the St. Louis Blues Museum has even done. And I would like to reach out and see if they have anything in their archives. I've not had the time. But anyway, basically what happened is I have an original letter stating from Bob Lyons from the label that my great uncle Ben had saved, talking about how they were selling records really good. They wanted them to play with basically some more African American bands to adopt that sound a little bit and add that to their records, because they were more rock and roll, pop sound, versus more of a bluesy sound, as you guys heard. That was what they wanted to do. They thought that they were gaining momentum. They recorded their last record in '62, felt good about it. That was the last contact that he ever had. And that was it. Never heard anything else. Bob Lyons basically packed up everything and shipped off, and you never heard from him again. And at the same time, you have to think this is, the early '60s. The music industry is still trying to figure out itself. This is before the Beatles came. This is, Elvis Presley was still the dominant guy. And he was even taken advantage of by his manager. So you have to think this is a different time in music history, where basically the artist got screwed. It's really, really sad. And that was basically the whole point of my film. But anyway, what was fascinating was, which you'll see in the film, is that the band was able to meet Jerry Lee Lewis, the famous other big rock and roll idol from that time period of the 50s, at a pool party in St. Louis where they were playing at the Splash Platter parties. This is also where they met the famous, locally famous band Jules Blattner and the Teen Tones, which they also recorded on the Bobbin label. They have some really good music as well. One of my favorites was the Gamblin' Man and the Rock and Roll Blues. I have that 45. Really, really good. You can find a lot of these gems on YouTube. I'll post a link on YouTube too for some of these bands and songs. But and they were able to open up for Jerry Lee Lewis, and at the time he was facing those basically sexual misconduct, or I don't know how to really word it, but that's when he married his cousin, and she was only 13 or 14 years old. And this was frowned upon back in the 1950s, obviously, and today that would just never fly. And unfortunately, I did try this. I did try to reach out to Jerry Lee Lewis to do an interview. Surprisingly, I was able to talk to his agent, and this was back in 2018, 2019, basically saying what I was working on as research for my great uncle's band, and would love to do an interview with him. And his agent was very, very pissy on the phone with me, saying that no, he doesn't do interviews anymore, he's done. And basically didn't care what I had to say. And I was trying to explain to him, hey, I'm a young college student, grad student, trying to do research, and that didn't go very far. Because I would have loved to interview Jerry Lee Lewis on if he could remember even playing at the Splash Platter parties in St. Louis, if he would even remember that. And the fascinating thing was he used to like to drink whiskey and milk together in a combination, which is very, very disgusting. Maybe I should try that on one of these episodes. We tried the Jerry Lee Lewis whiskey and milk drink. I don't know if you guys think I should do that, or, I think it'd be kind of funny. Screw it. Let's do it sometime. On that note, let's take another sip of the whiskey. These pool parties are very, very popular for the band. Helped them kind of get a footing in St. Louis a little bit. They played a lot of shows down there. Their records, they've recorded 3, like I said, at Bobbin. This blew the band up in Springfield. They kept getting show after show at all the local bars and restaurants and anywhere that they could play. they grew very, very popular. And basically, everything came crashing when Charlie got drafted into Vietnam in 1963, or 64, sorry. And he got shipped off to boot camp and eventually made his way over there to serve for his country. And in the meantime, Ben continued the band. They kept playing under the name Harmony Brothers, still playing all over the place. They even reached up to Peoria, Bloomington, Champaign. They made many, many TV appearances. They made a TV appearance on the Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour out of Chicago. It was basically a contest where if you won the contest, it was basically kind of like an early version of American Idol. If you had the best sound or the best, band or group, which at the time they wouldn't let them take the whole band up there, so it was only Ben and Charlie playing. And they played the famous Elvis song "Too Much" on live television. I also have a recording of that. You guys can listen to it real quick. And again, it's very rough sounding, or you may want to turn down your audio.
The first of the acts is two young fellas, Benny and Charlie Harmony, who appear as act number 1 on today's Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour. Two brothers from Springfield, Illinois, our state capital. They sing, and which one plays the guitar?
I do, Benny.
You're Benny, huh? Benny's a guitar player. You're also the older, are you, Benny?
Yes, I'm 20 and Charlie's 16. But we're not the oldest in the family. There are 6 others older than us. There's 8 children all living.
Hey, that's a wonderful family. You come from Springfield. Are you on a farm down there, boys?
No, we live on the outskirts of town. Our father was a coal miner, but he's retired.
He's retired, huh? Well, that's fine. You certainly raised a wonderful family. You're the babies, eh? Okay, boys, you come on over there and get that electric guitar hooked up and get ready to play for us. From all the way down in Springfield, Illinois, Benny and Charlie Harmony, who are going to sing the same way, harmoniously, as act number 1 on today's Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour. They're going to sing "Too Much."
Well, honey, I love you. Too much I need your loving. Too much when I want the thrill of your touch. Gee, I can't love you. Too much when you do all the living while I do all the giving, 'cause I love you. Too much. Well, you spend all my money. Too much I had to share your honey. Too much, well, when I want some loving, you're gone, oh, don't you know you're treating your daddy wrong? Now you got me started, don't you leave me broken hearted, 'cause I love you too much. Well, I need your loving all the time. I need your loving. Please be mine. I need you near me. Stay right close, please hear me. You're the most. Well, now you got me started, don't you leave me broken hearted, 'cause I love you too much. Well, every time I kiss you, a sweet lips, oh, I can hear my heart go. A flip, flip, well, I'm such a fool. Your charm, oh, take me back, baby. In your arms, I like to hear you sighing, even though I know you're lying, 'cause I love you too much. Well, little honey, I love you. Too much, I need your loving. Too much when I want the thrill of your touch. Hey, gee, I can't love you. Too much, you do all the living, why I do all the giving, 'cause I love you too much. Well, every time I kiss your sweet lips, oh, I can hear my heart go. But well, I'm such a fool for your charm. Come on, take me back, baby, in your arms. I like to hear you sighing, even though I know you're lying, 'cause I love you too much, too much.
Benny and Charlie Harmony, contestants number 1 on today's Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour.
And there you go. There's a snippet of them singing "Too Much" on the Morris B. Sachs Amateur Hour. Unfortunately, they did not win, so the winner would get a record contract. And this was right before they got their contract with Bob, and they tried this. But anyway, but they played in Champaign on Barn Dance, which is another fascinating story of how I called the Champaign news company. I can't remember what their news channel is. Emailed a guy, got a hold of someone that basically has a bunch of TV recordings from ever. Got a hold of him. He told me that the news station donated these to Springfield back when everything would go to the Lincoln Library in Springfield, the Sangamon archives or whatever. I can't think of it off the top of my head right now, but yeah, these news stations, or the Champaign news station, donated this, and eventually ended up at the Lincoln Presidential Library and Museum. So I emailed someone from there, and basically they were able to locate the box full of film. None of it's been digitized. I asked if we could possibly get it digitized. They said that they're going to eventually order the equipment to digitize this, but they have a lot of other things that are more prioritized in digitizing than that. So basically, I was stopped right there, and I was so upset because I thought I was able to basically uncover not live footage, but footage of them singing on television with the audio. But the guy from the news station was able to send me a clip of the announcer talking and introducing the show, which you guys will see in the film, which is really, really great footage. I was really happy to at least have that. But it would have been even better if I was able to get the actual footage of Ben and Charlie playing on stage, which I do believe and I know is at the Lincoln Presidential Library Museum. So hopefully they can digitize that for me one day so I could obviously include that in my film. I could hopefully possibly work on that some more, but that's why I'm doing a podcast instead. But anyway, but when Charlie comes back, the Harmony Brothers Band continues. In the late 60s, they perform against at these bars and throughout the community. Very, very popular. The sad thing is, actually, before I get to that part, I have some recordings of them playing in Raymond, Illinois. Actually, a live recording of their show. Pretty cool. They sang a lot of late 60s hits. Not late 60s, they play a lot of late 50s, early 60s hits. Pretty cool stuff. The audio's not the best, but again, it's still very, very interesting being able to listen to this today. Very fortunate. It's better than not being able to hear the sounds. Anyway, what's sad is the brothers had a major difference in music. Ben wanted to continue to play the 1950s sound, when Charlie wanted to get away from the 1950s and play more with the times, which was more Creedence Clearwater Revival. Obviously, the Beatles were very big, a lot more modern stuff, and Ben was still stuck in the 50s, you could argue. So they basically split up. Ben continued with the Ben Harmony combo, and then Charlie continued to play with his own band, and then Tom Blasco, the accordion player, started his own band, so Charlie was the lead singer for them for a long time. This continued all throughout the 70s, all the way up into the 80s. Ben played for my parents' wedding in 1982. He was the band that was the live music, for example. The brothers really never got along since they broke up from one another. Ben started, not obviously, but he started a family, wasn't able to chase his dreams like he wanted to, basically get a recording contract. He didn't have the time. He's raising a family. On the weekends, he would play to earn an extra $1. Charlie, on the other hand, didn't have any of the family or anything like that. he did try to go back down to Nashville and get a record deal. And he did. It never panned out, unfortunately. Here are some actually really, really amazing recordings. He had an amazing voice. I'll play you one of the songs that he sings. It's actually really, really incredible to hear.
1, 2, 3, 5, 4 o'clock, rock. 5, 6, 7 o'clock, 8 o'clock, rock. 9, 10, 11 o'clock, 12 o'clock, rock. We gonna rock around the clock tonight. Put your ladder bags on. Join me home. We're gonna have some fun when the clock strikes. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock it, rock it, rock it till the whole night. Rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight. When the clock strikes 2, 3, and 4, and the band downstairs, we're gonna yell for more. We're gonna rock around the clock tonight. We're gonna rock it, rock it, rock it till the whole night. Rock, we're gonna rock around the clock tonight. When the child strike 5, 6, 7, 7, baby, we'll be ready in 7
And again, he got basically chewed up and spit back out by the music industry once again. And at that time, he finally gave up on the music industry of trying to chase after his dreams of getting a recording contract. So unfortunately, both brothers weren't able to make it big in the music industry. And what's really sad, because they both were extremely, extremely talented. Like you can hear and argue, in my opinion, they are just as talented or even more talented than the famous Everly Brothers. But because the Everly Brothers, their music was written for them, and Ben and Charlie both wrote their own music, which is truly, truly incredible. And which the sad thing is of the story is, like I said, they just couldn't get to their final goal of making the big time. But what's really interesting is they put on a reunion concert in the early 90s at a bar in Springfield. A lot of people came. You can see that in the documentary. I have a short clip of that. Pretty cool that I was able to have that digitized. I found that also in all my research. Digitize that. And it's pretty interesting to see that. And they both say that they would never trade in but they trade in that they thought that they never made it big, because they thought they made it big in their own eyes of being the big band of small community of Springfield and the surrounding community. They really did believe they made the big time in their prime. They just never got the big money recognition behind that. And honestly, they never got a cent for any of their music today. That's one of my goals that I'm currently working on, is to try to locate who owns the rights to this music. I know it's only 6 songs, but it's lost. It's lost in the jungle of other bands, because this is very, very common. And throughout my research on the Bobbins label, it seemed that you can look at that Little Milton, Fontella Bass, and Albert King all end up going to Chess Records in Chicago. So I believe that the rights were sold to Chess, which Chess Records eventually sold out, which I believe they sold out to the Geffen Records. So I think at the end of this rainbow or this trail, I think Geffen Records owns the rights to the Harmony Brothers, but I could be completely wrong. Who the hell knows? I would love to know. I would love to be able to find that, pinpoint that, because, again, like I said, we have 2 very famous local artists. A lot of older folks remember them, love them. Even on the Memories of Springfield Facebook page, they are talked about quite often still to this day. And unfortunately, my great uncle Ben passed in 2020, not from COVID or anything like that, so no need to panic. But he was not able to see my finished product of my film that I created about him and his brother and their band in the following spring. He passed away in October, and I had this done in May of 21. And it's hard to believe that now it's just been a little over 1 year that I was able to do this. Very, very stressful, very, very difficult. I look back and there'd be so many things I would change, but I've learned a lot, and being, learning to be a filmmaker / documentary / historian, very, very, very scary, stressful. Even like this podcast, at first I was hesitant, but I feel like I figured it out somewhat. Talking into the mic, the audio, how it sounds. I'm still playing with a little bit of that stuff. I finally have a nice computer where I can run all these programs. I'm not quite ready to go back and adjust my film that I created or extend it yet and to dive into that. I'm still taking a break because you guys, I spent so many hours. I would say last year, I probably spent over easily 150 hours just creating the documentary. That's insane to think. And that's probably a low number. That's I'm including, like I said, all the research I did before grad school, during grad school. And, it's a fascinating story. I wish that they made the big time. I wish they were famous, but at the same time, it's pretty interesting that they were locally famous. They made the top 40 in Central Illinois music charts at one time in the late 50s. And I feel like their story is worth telling. I think it's very interesting. There's a good story, too, that Ben tells of when they were playing at one of the bars that rats got on stage and one ran up his brother Charlie's leg, and he jumped up in the sky and threw his guitar, and they ran off stage and were trying to beat the rats off the stage. There's another one when they were playing, which starts off the intro to the documentary of how they were playing on New Year's Eve, and a fire breaks out in the bar, and the bar literally catches on fire. Ben had to use his guitar to smash a window to get out of the bar. They were lucky that they were able to save the guitar and some of their instruments and their lives to get away with it as well. But I thought that was another fascinating story. And, they were big. I mean, at the time, Ben said that, buses full of kids would follow them from Springfield out to the small communities like Raymond and Mechanicsburg. They would have an entourage just to follow them to see them play. That's how big they were. It's kind of hard to believe that today, but, I wish I could go back in time for one night to witness this band play. I would have loved every second of it. But, that's the history of the band within about an hour here. I hope you guys enjoy this. Take a chance to check out the documentary. I'll put a link of that in the bottom of the description, along with YouTube links for you guys to listen to the songs in full. And if you guys want to hear anything else about the band, let me know. And the next episode, I'm going to dive into the behind the scenes of making the documentary, which I will go over the stress, the pressure, all the behind the scenes things I had to do, the failures, the accomplishments, and how I almost gave up, which I didn't. But thanks, guys, for listening. I hope you guys enjoyed this episode. Don't forget to, don't forget to turn on notifications for the podcast. Follow it. I appreciate every follow. I'm already over 250 listens now. I'm very excited about that. Don't forget to check out all the social media links down below. And I'm looking forward to making more exciting content for you guys. Sorry for the short hiatus.